kind of gravitate more to those folks that maybe aren't as big a name. It is always fun and exciting for somebody like me to listen to those folks. So I just pulled a tarp out in the driveway and started gutting this deer. And I'm looking up YouTube. I've literally got my iPad and a knife. I listened to podcasts from you, and you guys would talk about layering systems. I was like, what the hell is a layering system? I think I went in initially with a fisherman's mindset. Most of the time, you're coming home with something. You got to be able to get there. You got to be able to keep going. Get up, get active. This is Mike Hale, and you're listening to The Wild Initiative.
Put down your latte and pull on your boots.
Our culture needs people that are leaders and not people that are waiting for somebody else to show them how to do it.
Those fields of tofu, that was formerly habitat for wildlife. You're killing off wildlife by being a vegetarian just as much as a hunter when he kills a deer.
I'm like, well, you see that bush right there? There's your bathroom.
Yeah. My dad wears a Levi jacket. He sits in front of a sagebrush, and he tells me the best camo is hold still.
Not to Donnie Vincent this, but be relentless in everything you do. Don't crap out, go back to the truck with excuses or whatever.
Okay, assume I get a deer. How do I cut it up to fit into a Honda Civic?
Just get outside and go, because once you do, it's all gravy from there.
Hey, this is Zach Griffith.
This is Hannah Barron.
This is Jason Phelps of Phelps Game Calls.
Hey guys, this is Cody Rich from the Rich Outdoors Podcast.
What's up guys, this is Chad Mendez.
You're listening to The Wild Initiative.
Hey y'all, welcome to a bonus episode of The Wild Initiative. I am here with the Run Ride Ruck Challenge and longtime podcast listener, Mike Hale. We were talking a little bit earlier, and Mike has been listening to the podcast quite a while. He's kind of become a good Instagram buddy, if you will, and we kind of both realized this is the first time we've actually talked. So, Mike, it is great to finally have you on the podcast.
Absolutely, thank you.
So yeah, I think it's funny. We were talking earlier. You said what was it? You said episode 4 was around when you started listening.
Yeah, I think it was around episode 4. That's when I started listening.
So I'm gonna put you on the spot here. I want to know some of your favorite episodes of the podcast. So for all the folks listening, this guy has listened to effectively every episode of my podcast for the most part, and
pretty much.
I'm curious, off the top of your head, what would you say are some of your favorites that stick out?
Bar none, hands down, first one is your Idaho recap.
Okay.
The one where you talked about the mishaps. Absolutely. I think I've listened to that one probably 3 or 4 times now.
Wow.
Because it just, it helps remind me that, okay, I had a horrible experience or whatever. It was, the hunt wasn't good. Just hearing all the build up to yours and what took place, it was just nice to hear that, okay, we all have struggles. And just, every once in a while, you just need some of that reminding. And then that one, the ones with the 3A guys down in Arizona.
Okay, yeah.
I like those ones. It's kind of like a series there.
Yeah, because I did the one
off the top of my head. Those are ones that come right away.
I did the one with them, and that was before I got my deer, and then I kind of did the recap after that, and so you got both bookends of the story. Those were a couple of fun ones.
They were fun. I mean, it's always nice to hear some of the interesting information that you're getting from some of your more seasoned professional folks that obviously you've got some big names that you've interviewed, like we were talking about earlier with Christy Titus, as an example. Some of these folks that are out there and more popular, but it's always, I kind of gravitate more to those folks that maybe aren't as big a name, but are really awesome people, and kind of being able to bring those folks to light is always fun and exciting for somebody like me to listen to those folks.
And those are, you've heard the podcast, I love just talking to people. I mean, if they've got an interesting story to tell, it doesn't matter to me if they've got 50 followers or 50,000. Promotional aspect, one works a little bit better than the other sometimes when they share, but no, I mean, I love just sharing those stories and talking with people. And I think, when you get into those stories, you get a lot of little tidbits, because you get some good information.
Yeah.
I get whatever, Corey Jacobson to come on and we talk about elk hunting. And he just lays it out, or like the elk nut, and you learn so much from those. Like you got to take notes.
Absolutely.
But there's certain things that somebody doesn't straight out teach you, and you get so many of those when they're sitting and they're talking about their elk hunt for 20 minutes. You know, they're describing it in detail and all this stuff they did, and you pick up tidbits that they may not tell you if they're just laying it out in an ideal situation here. But that's why I love those stories. So, and then
Remy, is that how you pronounce his name?
Remy Adeleke.
Yeah, that was an awesome episode. That guy's story, that was amazing. I was at the gym listening to that, and I was like, oh my gosh, whatever happens to after the gym today, that's easy compared to what this guy had to go through. That blew me away. What an amazing story. Great episode.
So I had gotten partway through his book when I did that episode, and then, you know, I had been reading it, but then I got distracted. I hadn't done any reading for a while, and just kind of lost track. So I recently just started it over again, and I have the Audible version. I've been listening to it on my hikes, and I'm so literally was listening to his book. An hour ago, something like that, 2 hours ago, and it's getting into like all the crazy stuff about like him joining the SEALs now, and like it's kind of in the most intense moment of the book.
Wow.
And I'm just sitting there like I don't even remember my hike. Like the whole time, like I was sitting there in my mind's eye, like watching him in Bud's training. I was not on my hike, so it was crazy. But
exactly. That was same thing with me when I was sitting there. I was doing. I think I was on the elliptical at that time. And I totally went longer than I had planned to, so I had to rush to make it to work on time. But it was great. I love it. Totally got lost in it.
That's cool, man. It's funny hearing from people what episodes stick out to them and why, because it's always so different. And you know, I'm not saying this about any of the episodes that you mentioned necessarily, but like there's some episodes I'll release and I'll be like, yeah, I mean, it was a good episode. It was like, I mean, I don't, you know, people might enjoy it. Like, I don't know. And then I'll get people I'll get a bunch of people that'll message me, be like, oh man, that episode was so great. And I'm like, really? That one? Like, that's the one that stuck out to you? And it amazes me because, I mean, I guess it speaks to all our different backgrounds and, you know, everybody relates to something different.
Well, like you got the Jim Shockey one, right? So people are going to listen to that because it's Jim Shockey. I feel like I know quite a bit about Jim because he's everywhere. But for somebody like me, I liked some of the other ones where it was the lesser known folks, kind of off the main path, so to speak.
And I like to, you know, pepper in a little bit of both, and like I said, just see who gravitates towards what. But speaking of diverse backgrounds, I want to hear about yours. How did you get your introduction, your start in all of this, the hunting, the fishing, the outdoors?
So my parents divorced when I was younger. And so my mom and my stepdad, we moved to a really small town. So I was born in Seattle. I've lived up here in the Pacific Northwest all my life. And we moved to a super tiny town called Quilcene, Washington. Kind of one of those places where if you blink, you've missed it on the drive-through. There was no stoplights. I had 18 kids in my graduating class. It was right at the foothills of the Olympic Mountains. I mean, super tiny, right? And so because there was literally the Olympic Mountains right essentially my backyard, there was the Quilcene Bay right in my front yard. Outdoor stuff was happening all the time. That's all we did. We spent all our time outside. Got into sports and things like that. And I went, I remember going hunting with my stepdad. Well, for all intents and purposes, he's my dad, but I went with him, I think when I was like 13. It was an archery hunt. He would practice his bow all the time. I think it was that he worked a lot, and I think that was just his stress relief. He'd go out there and shoot in the driveway. So I went with him one day, and shot a deer, and so we're going to go track it and ended up spooking it. And it could have been because I was like, hey, let's go after it, not knowing what the heck I was doing. So I probably forced him to go a little bit earlier than we should have. And so we bumped it, ended up crossing the river, and we lost the blood trail. And that was, and we searched for quite a while that day. He searched for the next couple days. I mean, he was calling buddies, this was obviously well before cell phones, and whatnot. So it really kind of, for me, it kind of did a number on me, knowing that I kind of helped hinder that hunt. And so I didn't hunt again for, 20, 30 years, basically. So anyway, it's not 30, but because we're so close proximity to the rivers and there's lakes and the salt water there, I fished all the time. So was always doing hunting. Not hunting, always doing camping, fishing, things like that outdoors, because that's what was there. Got away from the hunting thing, obviously, after that first thing. And then it was just kind of moved to, quote unquote, the big city, moved over to near Seattle and whatnot. And just something was missing. When you grow up in such a small town, small community where the woods are everywhere, and you go to a place like Seattle, I wasn't in Seattle, but for all intents and purposes, close enough. I just missed it. Felt like something was missing. And so about 5 years ago on a whim, I ran into one of my old friends from the school in the town that I grew up in. And he just asked me, he's like, hey, do you want to go hunting? Sure. What are we going to hunt? He's like, well, have you taken your course? I was like, no, let me do that. So I took my online hunting course, and I think first thing he did, we went goose hunting. And so I went out with him snow goose hunting, and we got a couple geese. I may have had something to do with one of them. I definitely did not have anything to do with the second one. That was 100% him. I like to claim that first one was kind of, I might have got a feather or something from it.
You slowed it down, and he was able,
Right. Exactly. So then he took me across the state to Eastern Washington. I bought his old bow, a little Matthews SQ2. And it was like a 2003, maybe. I think they made them from 2001 to 2003. So I like to tell people it was a 2003, so it didn't sound like quite the dinosaur. But we went over Eastern Washington, and it was so freaking cold. It was so cold, and I didn't know what I was doing. So I had some cheap camo that wouldn't breathe, and I didn't know. And froze, because every time I'd get somewhere, I'd either be too hot, so I'd stop, I'd be all sweaty and whatnot. So yeah, it was miserable for 3 days, and came back with nothing. We saw some deer on private property, and that was it. But came back, and I was hooked. I was like, that sucked, but I love it. Let's do it again. So yeah, so I've been essentially hiking with a weapon for the last 5 years. Still have yet to harvest anything. Got wonderful luck out there, obviously, but yes, that's how it was. That's how it happened.
Oh man, so much bow hiking, bow hiking.
Yes, absolutely.
It's amazing how something that you can look back and you're like, that sucked so much, the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
Let's do it again. It's amazing. Yeah. Hunting's one of the few things that has that effect. Like, I'm trying to think of something else
I don't know,
that I look back on and I'm like, I was miserable the whole time. It was literally awful. I feel awful afterwards. Why do I want to go back and do this again so much? And I don't think there's anything else in my life that feels like that.
No, so like for me, so I have a camping trip that I did one year that I want to recreate, and it sucked. I hated it. Again, I was probably 14, so I was in pretty decent shape because I was playing sports and whatnot. And we went on a backpacking trip in the North Cascades. We were going to this series of high alpine lakes, and trailhead from the road was 3 miles in, and you're bushwhacking. Again, this is before OnX. This is before all that. So it was my uncle and his wife's side of the family, and they're doing this stuff by memory or notes that they'd taken down, or topographical maps that they had and whatnot. Well, we got up there when we had planned for us, and because it was only a 3 mile hike one way, we packed heavy. Like, I had 2 of these huge chili cans in my pack. My uncle had steaks and an inflatable raft. We had probably an 8-man tent. We had tarps. It was ridiculous. The one saving grace that we had was my aunt broke out. She had the Gatorade, the flavored Gatorade back in the day, and she broke it out. We had Nalgene bottles, and we had she's like, oh yeah, you should take the iodine pills and whatnot. Well, we're going up the mountains. The trailhead was washed out 10 miles. I mean, the road was washed out 10 miles before the trailhead. And I was like, okay, well, I'm glad we got all ready. I guess we're just going to turn around and go back. But yeah, my uncle's brother-in-law, he was probably 24, 25 ish. Now he's probably a little older than that. I just thought he was about that age. Anyway, they're college athletes, got out of the military. I mean, he and his buddy were they were ready to go. So they're like, yeah, let's go. Let's do this. 10 miles before the trailhead, I've got literally cans of chili in my backpack. So yeah, we set off, and I'm not talking like the little 1 pound cans of chili. I'm talking about, they were like 4, 5, 6 pound cans of chili. It was
family size chili.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. So we start hiking, and we're filling up water along the streams along the side, and putting iodine tablets in, and thankfully, like I said, we had that Gatorade mix, and we only made it to the second lake. We made it just up the trailhead. We finally made it to the trailhead, made it up this climb. And because after 10 miles that you weren't expecting, we had to go up probably a few hundred feet in elevation up this hard scrabble rock. And we found a stream up there, and we decided, okay, we're gonna stop. We're gonna set up camp because it was bushwhacking from that point on. So we knew we couldn't do it at night. So the next day, of course, we're in the Pacific Northwest. It rained, and it was raining. We were cutting through the woods trying to figure out, but the lakes were just gorgeous. We made it to the lower Hardscrabble and upper Hardscrabble. Those are the names of the lake. And we stopped at that upper one. We didn't make it to the third lake because, again, everybody was just exhausted from the first day. So we spent one evening there. The next day, the people are like, yeah, let's go home. So it's like, we never ate my chili. My uncle's like, I never used the raft. So we're packing down rafts and chili and everything. We did that 13 miles in a day on the way out. And I remember on the ride back,
I would have said screw that and left the chili for the next person up the hike hill. Just set the can of chili and a can opener on top of it, and with a note that says "enjoy."
Absolutely. If it was mine that I actually bought, I probably would have done that. But they paid for it. I was like 14 or whatever, so I was like, I better do it. But yeah, so we made it down in the one day, and I remember going, the worst thing you can do after something like that is sit down.
Yeah.
And so, we had to leave, and so we drove down, and I remember we stopped at Dairy Queen at one of the towns along the way, and I remember getting out of basically rolling out of the vehicle, and I remember stopping at the curb. How can I get my feet up high enough to get over this curb? I could barely lift them to shuffle forward. And I remember, so we did, when we got back to his house, he had, one of the split levels, and I was so thankful I was staying at his house, and I was going down and he had to go up. We both were literally on our hands and knees. He went upstairs, I went downstairs, and I was like, okay, I'll see you guys tomorrow. It was probably 2:00 in the afternoon. I slept the rest of the day. It was great. But now all I want to do is go back. I tried to talk the wife into going this summer. I was like, let's do it this next summer. If she doesn't, I might take my daughter up there and just go for it.
Here, honey, here's a giant can of chili.
Yeah, we'll leave the chili at home. Things have gotten a little better since the early 90s or late 80s.
This is a family tradition. You have to carry it. But Dad.
Exactly. I know this is going to suck, but 20 years from now, you're going to enjoy it. You're going to look back and with fond memories. That's basically the closest thing I have to that. But and the other thing, so we've got this salvage tag law in Washington State. So I don't know if you know what that is.
Yeah.
But if a deer or elk is hit on the side of the road, you can pick it up and take it. So I got notified. It was brand new, and I got notified about it. And my buddy was like, "Hey, there's a deer that just got hit. It's on the road." So like an idiot, I decided I'd go pick it up. And I was in my minivan at the time. I had my two girls in the back. Yeah, I mean, this was great. It's thoroughly planned out. So I'm driving the minivan, get on I-5 and, on the freeway. And I've got my two young daughters in the back, pull over where this deer was hit. And I put it in the back of my van because I've been hunting now for 2 years, haven't gotten anything. And here's a chance for venison. I'm not going to pass it up.
Oh, yeah.
So I put it in the back of the van. Meanwhile, cars, I'm sure, were wondering, what the heck is this guy doing? Because it was the first year of this law. So they're like, this guy is literally loading a deer in the back of his van. He's got two little girls in the back seat. They were 4 and 6 at the time, I think. I mean, they were looking at me like I had lost my mind. We get home, because the way the law is, you can't take care of the deer at the spot. You have to remove the whole carcass.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay.
They don't like gut piles on the side of the road kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Which makes sense. Instead, I just chose to do it in my driveway.
No.
That was awesome.
No.
Oh yeah, totally. I wasn't thinking at all through the process. It was pure, just go and make this happen.
Get her done.
And so my girls, I was like, I couldn't take the girls, out. I didn't have On X at that time, so I didn't know public versus private. I mean, you eventually can figure it out if you drive far enough, but yeah. So I just pulled a tarp out in the driveway and started gutting this deer. Neighbors were wondering what the heck's going on. I sent a picture to one of my buddies. He was like, hell yeah, that's awesome. I sent a picture to my wife, and her response was not the same. She's still traumatized by it, not gonna lie. So I hung it up in the garage, and I'm looking up YouTube. I've literally got my iPad and a knife, and I'm like, okay, how do I take care of this deer? And about 12 hours later, I finally finished, and I just remembered telling pretty much anybody that would listen, like, I will never do this again. I'm done with hunting. I never want to touch a deer again. This was absolutely the worst experience ever. And then I ate some of the venison, and I totally I didn't cook it right. I completely overcooked it. A different buddy of mine I was like, hey, how do you do this? It's like, I'll put it on the frying pan, throw some butter on it. I'm like, okay. Well, that's literally his instructions to me. I was like, I don't know temperatures. I'm trying to look at stuff. Oh, I completely overcooked it. And my wife was like, I've had venison before, and this is not good. Are you sure it was good? You sure this was okay? She grilled me over it because, again, it was on the side of the road. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was bad. Thankfully, I figured out how to cook it better, and she loves it. And I've gotten over that trauma and whatnot. But yeah, I just remember I told my mom, I was like, I'm never doing this again. Nope, I'm done. Yeah, I spent some money on some gear. I'm going to try and figure out who I can sell it to because I'm done.
Oh, I'm dead. Oh, I'm dying right now. This is fantastic. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So, I mean, comparing that, you look at from then to now, what are maybe some other things that have changed, in what, 5 years of hunting now?
Yeah, 5 years.
5 seasons.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the maybe bigger lessons you've learned, or how has your mindset changed? What's different between the Mike Hale that first was getting back into the woods and maybe having something to do with geese, and the Mike Hale now?
I'd say the biggest thing that's changed for me is really just my knowledge. Well, because I still realize there's so much I don't know. I mean, it's ridiculous how much I don't know. But because I've had little wins along the way, it just drives me to keep going farther and farther and farther. I think I've done quite a bit of research, not as much as I should, obviously, because I'm still hiking with a bow or whatnot, as opposed to harvesting an animal. But I've got better gear now. I understand the layering system. Because like I said before, it was, oh yeah, you wear long johns and you put on the heaviest piece of camo ever, and that's your layering system. I'm like, I remember people were talking about, listening to podcasts from you guys would talk about layering systems. And I was like, what the hell is a layering system? And so, just learning about stuff like that has gotten so much better. I think now the difference too is, I'm older and I'm realizing how much my enjoyment of just being out there is. I've really grown to just love being outside and being away from the noise, being away from people per se. I mean, I love people. I'm a manager. I work with people all day, every day. And I love that, but it's nice to just be outside and not have to run decisions by other people, just be able to, if I am out there hunting with a buddy, it's just he and I collaborating or, whatnot. But I just really think the main difference is I enjoy the aspects of the hunt. I think I went in initially with a fisherman's mindset, so to speak. For most people, when you go fishing, you go out there for a fairly short amount of time, so to speak. It's, less than a day most of the time. You go out there, you're using A, B, or C bait or whatnot. And most of the time, you're coming home with something, or people around you are coming home with something, or, it's pretty quick and easy to be like, oh, this didn't work right here at this portion of the lake or this portion of the river. I'm going to move down here or move up there. And so I went into it with that mentality, like, why am I not having success? This is what's supposed to happen. Now I realize that that's not reality. I'm living proof of that. And I think that challenge has just really started to motivate me. And I'm in a lot better shape now than I was then. And I think when I first started out, the hiking was the challenge. I knew that I didn't know how to hunt, so to speak, but I just couldn't make it to the next ridge. So I didn't want to. But now that I can, I still got a long way to go, for sure. But just knowing that I can do that just motivates me to, okay, what's around that next bend? What's over that horizon? What can I learn over there that I can't learn right here? Or, it's just kind of that, I know I will learn more if I go there, do that. Just that motivation to get out and do more, I think, is the main thing that has changed.
There's one thing you said earlier that super identified with, and you're talking about when you were listening to like the podcast and stuff, when we were talking about layering system, and you were kind of like, what the hell is that? And it made me laugh because I identified so much with that, because so much of how I learned what I learned was, I'd kind of gotten into it and I'd figured out some stuff, but I'd been talking to my buddy and he's like, okay, you know, you got to listen to these podcasts and, you know, this is the stuff you want to check out. And so I'm listening to these podcasts and, you know, whether it's like Gritty or whether it's Rich Outdoors or whatever. And, you know, they talk about something and I'd be like, I have no idea what the hell they're talking about. And so I'd like write down a little note. If it was something I would hear often, I'd like kind of write down a couple of little notes or something. Or, you know, whatever it was, or I'd make, you know, just keep it in the back of my head to go ask my buddy or to go look it up. And there's so much value in that too, because then you just you pick up those little bits piece by piece, and then you go back and like fully understand it. But I just identified so much with that, where it's like they keep saying this thing. I know what the words are individually, but together they don't make sense to me. Like,
oh, for sure. And you know, like we talked about earlier, I actually listened to you before I listened to Gritty as an example. I didn't know who that was. People kept saying Gritty, and I thought like Gritty Bowman. I was like, okay, is this guy dirty? I mean, what's the deal with this guy? I didn't realize that was his name. That's how out of touch I was with things, right? And so it took me a while to figure out that no, that was okay. That's a name. But I think the thing that really attracted me to your podcast was the fact that it was built towards newbies, and I 100% was. And I didn't have, like I said, my dad hunted a long time ago, but I don't know that he ever went out deer hunting again after that time with me. And he didn't do any other hunting. So I couldn't really call on him. I had a couple buddies that were really into the fishing and kind of hunted on the side, but they didn't talk about it much. So really, and you know, living in the city, you know how it is. There's not a whole lot of people that you know that you can talk hunting with that don't look at you like you're crazy or, you know, never want to speak with you again. So yeah, it was interesting. It was a challenge. And so I'd listen to your podcast. Like I said, I would do the same thing. I'd take notes. Okay, what does this mean? What's a sleep system? Like, is there something that I'm totally missing? I got a sleeping bag. I've got a pad. What is a sleep system? You know, I just heard people talking about that. I didn't know what that was, but apparently you need it to go backcountry hunting. So yeah, it's just interesting. You know, it happens at work. You know, the vernacular that we all use, it becomes second nature to us when we're in that environment. But when you have somebody new, like I was, and you're hearing these things, it's almost like you need a breakdown. Otherwise, you're going to end up with, you know, $50 camel pants from Cabela's that don't breathe, and a coat that, man, weighs about 50 pounds. And so, you know, you think you're doing the right thing, and you're sweating like crazy anytime you move, and then you're freezing as soon as you stop. I mean, that's what I did for like 2 years.
I just laugh because I think about it's actually, I normally have it in here because it's normally like my jacket I wear in the kind of just in the office when it gets cold. I think it's in the house, but I just think to my first quote unquote hunting jacket that I would wear, it was just this big heavy duty like canvas Carhartt jacket that just happened to be in Realtree camo. And that was what I would wear. I mean, it was warm as hell. It was great. So it was fine when I was sitting in a tree stand. Did not work so well when I was trying to hike hills though.
Exactly. Exactly. It's funny. I still have a lot of that old camo in my closet, and you can see the progression. You know, that stuff's way in the back now. It's like, okay, I should probably get rid of it. I need to donate it or something. I just feel bad to the person who ever takes it. So I haven't done it. But yeah, it's just the progression. It's gotten so much better. I mean, the gear is so much better than it used to be. But it's like you need somebody to kind of walk you through that. And that's where, like I said, I'd gotten a hold of your podcast. It's helped me immensely and kind of guided me to other things. And I think that, there's a group up here. I'm gonna butcher it now, but it's like Washington backcountry. Oh man, I'm blanking on the guy's name, but he talks about mentorship is conservation. And we had he had a get together, and it was all about that and how the goal is to get hunters out there, but don't just get the numbers going. Hey, let's get them into a hunt, get them into hunting, and then just send them loose. It's let's get them into hunting and let's talk about them. Let's help them.
Mm-hmm.
Because you go out there. I mean, thankfully, I had enough people around me that encouraged me to keep going. Because I sucked, and it sucked for the first couple times, but I was like, no, I'm going to keep going. It's going to suck, but that's just part of it. It's okay. And I think, thankfully with the fishing, I spent a lot of days in the cold, in the wet, in the rain. I mean, when you live in Pacific Northwest, it's hard to get away from that, but you just do it. And I kind of took that mentality with hunting. You just do it. Now I wish I would have known what I knew then. Now, I wish I would have known now what I knew then, so to speak, or I'm sure I'm saying that backwards, but whatever. But yeah, I mean, it's there's so much information out there, but I still feel like if you can get a good mentor and you can ask, like you say it on your thing, you're not afraid to ask the questions.
Well, you effectively, because you listen to the podcast, you know what my final question always is, and you just effectively answered it without me asking.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
What question?
But so on that note, if folks want to follow along with this season, with this coming season, where can they find you online? Check out your stuff.
I'm on Instagram at Mike Hale Outdoors.
And is that what, Mike Hale _outdoors? Is that what it is? I think something like that.
I think so. Yeah. Yeah. I think it's Mike Hale _outdoors. Yeah.
Here we go. I'm typing it in. Yeah. Mike Hale, one word, _outdoors. So I'll make sure to link to that on the show notes page. I will post that up and send it out.
Nice.
So y'all make sure, head on over to the website. The episode will be posted up there. Check out the show notes page. You can get links to everything we talked about in today's episode. Make sure you head on over, give Mike a follow. But Mike, thanks so much for joining me today. Glad we finally got to talk, and we didn't even really talk about the Run Ride Ruck Challenge at all and your motivation. So
yeah,
I'm just we'll just have to talk about this again, but I'm just gonna say you have been absolutely killing it, man. You've been beating me up every day, and I've been getting up pretty damn early. But I'm super stoked every time I see you up tagging me and stuff, getting your miles in. So congratulations on that. That's awesome, man.
Thank you. Yeah. I just, it's kind of one of those things where I know we didn't really talk much about it, but I needed to do something different. And you can't, the definition of insanity, obviously doing the same thing, expecting a different result. You can't do the same thing every day and expect a different result. It's not going to happen. So it's like, I got to make a change. And I know, we can go off topic if you want, but I tell you, going to that elk-shaped camp with Dan Stanton was, it was life-changing for me, because he did something that, so I'm a data guy too. He did something that probably, and I know this sounds kind of cliche, but probably saved my life. He gave us an in scan, a body scan, and he's like, okay, so this is what your number should be for your visceral fat. So that's fat on your organs, right? And he's like, okay, who's got numbers above 5? And I'm like, yeah, that's me. Okay, who's got numbers above 10? And most of the class had numbers above 5, but like maybe a couple had numbers above 10. And he's like, who's got numbers above 15? And I'm like, I had my hand raised. And I was just like, nobody else did. I kind of looked around. It's like, oh crap, And he's like, Mike, dude, you got to do something. He's like, I want your numbers below 10 as soon as you can. I'm like, really? I was like, but it just made me realize how much I was stressing out my body. And I was like, I got 2 kids and a wife. I got to do something different. And Dan's message, using elk hunting, obviously the elk shape, using elk hunting as the lever to improve the rest of your life. And he's like, so thankfully he gave me that kick, and then you did that challenge, and I was like, okay, that's going to be easy. I'm going to be up anyway. So I'm going to be up every day. Let's do this, no problem.
That was the whole point of the challenge right there, was to get people to just start off moving. I just wanted to give people some motivation somehow. And because I was feeling it, I'd kind of started whatever that Monday was, like the 28th or something like that. I'd started challenging myself then, and I was feeling so motivated that I wanted to share that with everyone else. And so that was, somebody had challenged me to come up with a challenge for other people. And I was like, this is it. This is what I'm feeling. I want everybody else to join in. So I'm glad to see that it was always glad to see you participating in it, for sure.
Well, I think that's great. I mean, it's a great way to use your platform to motivate people to get healthy. I mean, because, you can go sit in a tree stand and you can kill a deer, right? Mm-hmm. Or you can shoot a turkey or something like that, being sedentary, and that's great. But you're going to have so much more. I mean, again, my personal feeling, you're going to have so much more enjoyment getting out in the woods, being able to hike around, go see different parts of the landscape. But you got to be able to move to do it. You got to be able to get there. You got to be able to keep going. And if people can start like with your challenge, get up, get active. Cool. Do that for 11 days in a row. Now make it 12. Now make it 13. And pretty soon, more and more people are out there, and they've developed that habit, developed that pattern. I tell you what, I made a post yesterday, and I had, I was up early, even commented how early I was. I had to be at work at 3:30. So what I really wanted to do was just sleep. I was like, no, I'm going to make this happen. So I woke up at 1:30. I went and hit the gym first. Everybody at work thought I was crazy that I did that, but I was like, no, I'm going to do this because I know that I feel so much better if I hit the gym first and then go into work. Worked 15 hours, running all over the place, leading these events, ended up walking 15 miles. You know what? I feel great. And it's, stuff like what you did with the run, ride, ruck challenge that helped motivate me. And I was able to share that with some of the people I talked with yesterday at work as well. Just be like, they asked me, why are you so chipper? I'm working out. What have you been doing? So hopefully some more people will get into doing something like that. And, I mean, we're such a sedentary nation, unfortunately, but that's what I think that's the other thing that's kind of motivated me with this hunting thing. People like you were always posting about stuff in the gym as well. And it's just motivating for folks like me. That was, I'd go to work, come home, sit on the couch and expect great things. And that doesn't happen when you're sitting there on the couch. So
I'll tell you, I still get there sometimes, sitting on that couch thinking I need to be working, but Netflix is calling. It's tough, but You know, that's why I'm going full momentum at the start of the year.
Well, even God, he rested on the seventh day. It's okay
there
to
we
do
go.
it once in a while. That's why I tell myself it's okay to do that every once in a while.
Well, on that note, Mike, thanks so much for joining me tonight, man.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. Good luck with the new stuff you got going on.
I appreciate that. All right, y'all, that'll do it for this bonus episode of The Wild Initiative. Make sure y'all check out the show notes page. You can get links to everything we talked about in today's episode. All right, y'all, that'll do it for today, but I hope this episode inspired you to get involved, get outdoors, and plan your initiative for the wild.
Thank you for listening to The Wild Initiative. Please take a moment to leave a rating and review on iTunes or Stitcher, and head on over to thewildinitiative.com to get show notes, check out the blog, gear discounts, other podcasts from the Wild Initiative family, and more.